Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues episode 124. Vermont Yankee is still leaky and messed up. Now they decommissioned it some time ago, and one of the reasons was it was leaky and messed up. There was a big thing over it leaked some tritium into the surrounding area, and even though nothing that ever happened at Vermont Yankee was like a high-grade nuclear disaster, it was just the occasional, like, some leaky rivet or something. And I know that there was like old, slightly decayed wood in the exhaust tower, and that was sort of making people slightly nervous. It did have systemic problems, and ultimately though, and this is an important thing, that we've got to talk about this when we talk about energy. Ultimately, it was the free market that got Vermont Yankee to fold on its own. Years and years of lawsuits and rambling by people about the dangers of having a nuclear plant there and environmentalism never dislodged Vermont Yankee from its operation. What happened is that they eventually stopped turning a profit, and they're like, well, why would we bother to keep it open? It's going to be cheaper to decommission and clean up the site, ultimately, than it is to continue operations. And so they closed. Now Vermont gets it. And one of the things that they spoke of at the time was, if Vermont Yankee shuts down our power, it'll be apocalyptic because it'll be so expensive. Well, as far as I know, most people in the state haven't noticed that big a rate increase. In fact, it's pretty much the same. I think for some people it's probably cheaper. So it wasn't any more efficient. It wasn't turning a profit. You do have that always ever-present possibility of a major problem at Vermont Yankee. In the case of Vermont Yankee, this was not a particularly well-run site. And it's still leaky now. Like in the context of the article, they're saying, well, it's leaking less than it was before. Less groundwater is entering the turbine level and mixing with this, radioactive material down there. It's less of a problem now. Instead of several thousand gallons a day, it's only a few hundred gallons a day. Okay, well, I'm sure, again, it's this sort of thing that was said during the operation of Vermont Yankee that pissed so many people off. A callousness. A lack of comprehending, yes, that may not cause a disaster in and of itself, okay. You're not explaining it properly enough to the people living around that community. To them, it sounds like you're saying, oh, well, a few leaks, it's totally normal, and don't worry about those cracks in the exhaust area. This mold growing in the ventilation system, it won't be a problem. Most people, though, they assume that nuclear power has far more finesse than that. That is, everything needs to be like totally lab-style, squeaky clean, no surface can have any rust, not a single drop of water can leak, otherwise things start blowing up. Now that's not correct, but they failed to make that differentiation to people. It was really public relations over any physical problems for the most part. But it's still messed up. It is a messed up site. They're having problems cleaning it up, and millions of dollars later it's still fucked up. This was always the problem with Vermont Yankee. I still get people saying, well, nuclear is the only real green energy. It's the only way to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. Well, no, it's totally wrong. You do realize that it takes oil to run the machines used to mine the ores that are then processed into nuclear materials. Then people start talking about thorium. Okay, build a thorium reactor. Yeah, that's fine. They say that you can potentially build one small enough to power a car using like a thimbleful of thorium to go 100,000 miles or some insane amount. If you can make it feasible and it won't even leave behind any significant nuclear remnant, yeah, go ahead. We'll see if that's something that can work. I think there was weapons production that kept them from doing that, if I remember correctly, because they were afraid that the thorium-style reactor would result in they wouldn't have any material to make weapons out of it or something. Why don't you just buy some of the old Russian missiles? Like, I think, didn't we used to buy them anyway and use them as nuclear fuel for a while? I think they shut that program down. They want to hold on to the nukes that they've got left, and probably the stockpile won't decrease for a while, thanks to people constantly going, Mo Russia, Red's under the bed, Putin is responsible for this cyber intrusion. Well, that's not the way to conduct diplomacy with the only other nation in the world potentially capable of wiping us off the face of the earth. That's just me, that's just my opinion. I think that that's stupid. You might as well just go back to nuke testing then. If we're gonna go back into the Cold War, can we have the cool aspects of it, like nuclear, like mushroom cloud footage and atomic music And people like, they're taking all the drugs basically because they think, well, we might die tomorrow anyway. Can we have that back instead of just this boring aspect of the Cold War with shitty diplomacy that makes people constantly pissy at each other? I think that'd be a better solution. That's about all. Peace out.